All right, everyone, pull up a chair. We need to have a very focused, very serious talk today.
A really serious one.
Yeah. For the last few weeks, we have been absolutely submerged in the latest intelligence assessments.
Deep in the weeds.
I mean, deep. We're covering everything from the massive U.S. military buildup down near Venezuela to, these critical zero-day cyber vulnerabilities.
And the silent threats, the stuff growing here at home, proxies,
Yeah.
specialized weapons.
It's overwhelming, and frankly, the technical jargon they use is almost a psychological weapon in itself.
It is kinetic coercive escalation.
Right, zero-day exploits, fifth-generation warfare.
That jargon is designed, whether they mean it to be or not, to make you feel powerless.
Mm.
It's a huge volume of dense technical data.
And you can't afford to get lost in it.
You can't. Or worse, panic. So our mission today, and we're drawing this only from the sources we've been given, is to translate that military speak into family speak.
So you can move past the fear.
And into actionable defense. This isn't about, running for a bunker. It's about understanding the specific threats to your daily life.
To your ability to buy groceries.
To use an ATM, to rely on the power grid. Simple things.
Exactly. We're here to provide that intellectual and tactical shortcut. We are decoding these complex reports for you, for the household, for the oikos.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the fundamental problem we're seeing here, this convergence of threats?
The core problem, and this is the term the think tanks are using in these assessments, is the polycrisis.
Polycrisis.
Right. It's not one crisis. It's three major, distinct storms that are being, engineered or exploited to all converge at the same time.
To achieve maximum disruption.
Maximum systemic disruption, yeah, in a really compressed time frame. But if you can see the convergence, if you see the timing and the location, you can prepare for it.
And preparation defeats panic.
Every single time.
Okay, so we're going to break down these three synchronized threats first. We're calling them the trap, the switch, and the sprawl.
And then, and this is the most important part, we'll pivot to the defense plan, a specific three-step framework.
Protocol inner wall, designed for the household. So let's start with the loudest piece on the board, the most visible one. Okay, let's unpack this first move, what we're calling the kinetic trap.
Right.
We're seeing this undeniable, just massive U.S. military posture in the Caribbean.
It's impossible to miss.
It really is. They're calling it Operation Southern Spear. And on the surface, the story they're telling is about stopping drug trafficking, deterring the Venezuelan regime.
Protecting allies in the region.
Right, all of that. But the intel suggests this is actually a massive piece of geopolitical distraction theater.
That's the core strategic insight from the reports. If you look past the official mission, you see this operation is really built on a, frankly, radical ideological shift in U.S. grand strategy.
Specifically about the Western Hemisphere.
Exactly. It's all laid out in the drafts of the 2025 National Security Strategy. Analysts are calling it the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine.
Okay, so the Monroe Doctrine is historical. It basically told Europe to stay out of the Americas. That was the gist of it. How does this Trump corollary update that for today? And why does it justify sending aircraft carriers?
So the original Monroe Doctrine was about political exclusion. Don't meddle here. The corollary is about creating what they call Fortress Americas. It's about resource control.
Fortress America.
Yeah. The 2025 NSS, it explicitly argues that global commitments, especially in Europe, parts of Asia, are an overextension.
That they drain U.S. power.
They drain military power, exactly. And the documents, they use some pretty inflammatory language questioning NATO's burden sharing to justify this massive permanent reallocation of military assets back to our own hemisphere.
It's a strategic retreat from the world stage to basically consolidate the immediate neighborhood as the main defensible perimeter.
That's it.
And that gives them the ideological justification they need to intervene in a place like Venezuela, which has, always resisted U.S. influence.
Precisely. They're defining Venezuela not just as some internal problem, but as the front line against these external state threats. In the reports, they identify 4 specific justifications, legal and political, that build this whole framework for intervention.
A casus belli.
A casus belli that is very, very difficult to counter diplomatically. They call them the 4 pillars of intervention.
Okay, help us frame those pillars for someone listening at home. What are the legal grounds they're trying to build here?
The first pillar is hemispheric exclusivity. This is the hardline interpretation of that corollary. The U.S. starts treating the presence of, say, Russian military advisors.
Or Iranian tech, Chinese money.
Exactly. All of that in Venezuela is no longer seen as a legitimate bilateral relationship. It's now a hostile foreign incursion.
And that gives the U.S. the unilateral right
To neutralize it. It's a claim of total military superiority over the entire hemisphere.
which immediately frames anyone in Venezuela who resists as what? A collaborator with a foreign enemy.
It's a powerful rhetorical tool. It really is.
Okay, what about the criminal element?
That's the second pillar, and it might be the most insidious one. It's the narco-terrorist nexus.
Okay.
By designating these state-affiliated criminal groups, specifically the Cartel de los Soles, which is basically embedded in the Venezuelan military, and the gang Tren de Aragua as foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs.
They collapse the distinction between law enforcement and war.
Legally, yes. That reclassification under U.S. law lets the military engage these targets with lethal force anywhere in the hemisphere,
Anywhere.
including inside Venezuela, without a formal declaration of war. They don't even need an AUMF.
That is a critical legal chess move. It turns a drug patrol into a counterterrorism operation.
Which requires a completely different level of force.
It does.
And the third pillar connects this overseas action directly to domestic politics.
Which is migration as a security threat.
Right. The NSS explicitly links mass migration across the southern border to direct national security threats. It frames large-scale crossings, particularly from Venezuela, as an invasion.
So stopping the flow of people becomes a domestic security issue.
Which justifies military action at the source to, quote, stabilize the regime causing the crisis. Or destabilize it, depending on your goal.
And finally, the pillar that gives them the economic motive.
And that's resource security. This pillar is all about guaranteeing unhindered access to key resources and locations.
We're talking about the Panama Canal.
The most critical maritime choke point in the hemisphere, yes. And also the massive energy-rich basin that spans Venezuela and Guyana. The documents are explicit. Resource disruption by hostile Venezuelan regime is an unacceptable risk to U.S. energy markets.
Okay, so that brings us to the actual hardware. The force profile for Operation Southern Spear. Given those four pillars, this is clearly more than just a couple of Coast Guard cutters looking for drug boats.
Oh, absolutely not. This is an overwhelming show of force. It signals readiness for high-intensity combat and amphibious assault. The intel reports confirm deployments that guarantee air dominance and the ability to seize and hold ground.
Let's get specific. The centerpiece is the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group. That means air superiority.
The Ford is the most advanced carrier in the world. Its presence means the U.S. can run sustained, high-intensity airstrikes against Venezuela's air defense systems, their IAs.
And provide close air support for troops on the ground.
It carries, 75 to 90 aircraft, including the F-35C. That jet is essential for what they call SEAD suppression of enemy air defenses.
Deep penetration strikes.
Yeah, this is a commitment to fight a conventional war, if it comes to that.
But the real tell, the indicator of an intent to actually seize and hold territory, which you need for regime change, is the amphibious group.
Absolutely. The reports highlight the USS Iwo Jima LHD, a WASP-class amphibious assault ship.
It's basically a small aircraft carrier for helicopters and Marines.
It is. It's the flagship for the amphibious ready group, and it's carrying the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. The 22nd MEU, that's about 2,200 fully equipped Marines ready to go ashore.
Why is the MEU so critical here? What does that signal?
An MEU is designed for three things: rapid response, seizing critical infrastructure, think airfields, ports, and then establishing a secure beachhead for more forces to follow.
So when you see an LHD and an MEU deployed?
The intent is not just to bomb. The intent is to put boots on the ground and secure key terrain.
And the sources also mentioned the MV Ocean Trader.
Right, that's a specialized vessel. It's used for launching and supporting special operations forces, SOF teams.
For what? Covert recon?
Covert reconnaissance, direct action missions, often targeting leadership or high-value infrastructure before the main force even arrives.
And the campaign is already kinetic. This is a crucial detail that I think gets lost in the headlines. The U.S. isn't just making threats, they're actively shaping the battlefield right now.
That's correct. This is what they're calling the gray zone campaign. The U.S. is actively testing Venezuela's reaction thresholds with sustained, lethal maritime strikes.
The sources document at least 22 strikes.
On fast boats and other illicit vessels just between September and mid-November of this year, 2025, resulting in over 83 fatalities.
So they're hitting these small boats, saying they're trafficking for FTOs or the cartel. But strategically, this campaign has a few different functions.
It does. First, it degrades the regime's revenue. Second, it gathers real-time intel on how they respond. And third, and this is crucial, It desensitizes the world to U.S. lethal action in the region.
Make it seem normal.
It normalizes it. The reports suggest these strikes, likely using Hellfire missiles, were carried out with what some analysts are calling a kill-everybody directive.
Wow.
Extreme prejudice, to ensure no survivors could relay tactics or precise attribution. It's high-stakes calibration.
So how is Venezuela responding to this? They can't match the U.S. Navy ship for ship. That's impossible.
They can't, which means they have to embrace a classic asymmetric strategy. They're calling it Caribe Soberano 200 or Sovereign Caribbean 200.
And what does that entail?
It's a defensive mobilization. The whole point is to make an invasion prohibitively costly. It's based on a war of the whole people doctrine.
Training civilian militias?
Training them, integrating them into military defenses. The idea is to make sure any U.S. ground advance faces resistance from every single street corner. Their goal isn't victory.
It's to deny the U.S. a swift, clean win.
Exactly. To drag them into a protracted, messy conflict.
Okay, what about their key defensive assets? If the U.S. is sending F-35s, Venezuela needs a credible anti-accessory denial shield, an A2AD system.
They do, and they have a formidable one, all Russian-made. The sources specify a few key platforms. The biggest one is the S-300 VM.
The anti-2500.
That's it. It's a long-range surface-to-air missile system. You can engage aircraft up to 200 kilometers away, and it's highly mobile.
Making it a prime target for any U.S. air campaign.
A primary target. If the U.S. can't suppress the S-300, air operations become incredibly risky.
And they have layers of defense below that, right?
They do. They have the mobile Buck M2E for medium-range defense and the Tor M2E for short-range. The Buck protects their ground units as they move, while the Tor is for point defense.
Shooting down drones, cruise missiles.
Exactly. This layered defense means any U.S. air operation is going to have a very, very high cost in munitions and potentially in lost aircraft. This is not a simple fight.
So even with all this pressure, this buildup, what's the most probable flashpoint? What's the one thing that could turn this standoff into an open, kinetic conflict?
The most likely trigger, according to all the sources, is the Guyana-Essequibo dispute.
The territorial conflict over that oil-rich region.
It provides the cleanest legal justification for U.S. military action. It lets the U.S. pivot from what looks like a regime change operation to defending a sovereign ally against blatant aggression.
And we saw a major Venezuelan provocation related to this just back in March of this year.
Correct. On March 1st, 2025, a Venezuelan warship entered Guyana's exclusive economic zone and basically sailed right up to the Liza Destiny FPSO.
The big ExxonMobil production vessel.
It was a direct military threat to Guyana's economic lifeline, a clear warning shot. Since then, Venezuela has escalated by passing laws to annex the territory, extending their military base on Coco Island.
All of which is against international law.
Completely. And the U.S. response has been a rock-solid security guarantee to Guyana. Unambiguous. They said they would stand shoulder to shoulder with them.
So Venezuela's disregard for the international court orders
allows the U.S. to frame an intervention not as unilateral aggression, but as upholding international law and defending a vulnerable ally. That border dispute is the designated tripwire. It's designed to give the whole operation international legitimacy.
So that's the trap, a massive distraction, a highly kinetic, high-risk standoff, all designed to draw U.S. attention and resources south. But if that's the wave of the hand, what's the trick? So if Storm 1, the kinetic trap in Venezuela, is the magician waving his hand wildly in the Caribbean, then Storm 2 is the trick itself. It's the domestic threat that the distraction enables. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this threat doesn't use missiles or Marines.
It uses code.
It uses code. We're talking about the silent weapon, the React-2 shell vulnerability.
This is the strategic pivot. The kinetic diversion of Operation Southern Spear, it pulls the U.S. government's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets, both human and technical, away from the domestic digital front.
It creates a blind spot.
A massive one, a vulnerability that hostile state actors are fully prepared to exploit. The threat isn't a bomb, it's a switch.
Let's break down React-2 Shell. I want our listeners to understand how this works, its scope, without needing a degree in computer science. So what is React.js, and why is this vulnerability so devastating?
Okay, think of React.js as the ubiquitous prefabricated building blocks used to build the digital storefront of the modern internet.
It's what makes websites interactive.
Exactly. Major banking portals, utility dashboards, the supply chain software that runs everything, critical communication platforms.
Yeah.
They all use React.js to create that responsive skin. It is the digital foundation.
Okay, and the vulnerability itself.
It's cataloged as CVE 2025-55182. It's Critical Remote Code Execution Flaw, an RCE. RCE means an attacker can run commands on the target machine, the server hosting the website, from anywhere in the world.
Let's use an analogy here to really clarify the mechanism. If React is the storefront, what's the specific weak point that's being exploited?
Okay, let's compare a web app to a big retail store. The user interface, the React part, that's the storefront window, and the customer service desk.
Right.
The information you type in, say, searching for a product or logging in, that's an instruction you give to the clerk. That clerk then takes your request into the back office where the main computer system processes it. That back office processing is called server-side rendering, or SSR.
So the vulnerability is in the back office. The clerk can't handle the instructions properly.
That is exactly it. When you submit data, a search query, an address update, the server processes it. Attackers have figured out how to inject a malicious payload, a specific string of corrupted data, into a field that looks totally harmless.
And because of the flaw.
The server doesn't sanitize it. It doesn't validate the input. Instead, it interprets that malicious data not as text, but as an executable command.
And that gives the attacker root-level access to the server.
Total control. It's terrifying.
It is. And the consequence of this silent compromise, is what the reports are calling the digital golem.
The term is not. A server that's been compromised by React 2 shell doesn't crash. It doesn't set off an alarm.
It looks fine.
It appears to function normally. The website loads, transactions go through, the power company's dashboard looks normal, but secretly, in the background, it's executing the attacker's commands.
It becomes a zombie system.
A digital golem. It can silently alter financial records, steal credentials, inject faults into power systems, or join a massive botnet. It's a quiet catastrophe. The reports call it an extinction-level event for digital trust.
Because you can no longer trust the data you're seeing.
You can't.
Now, attribution and timing are key here. This wasn't found by some kid in a basement. This exploit was weaponized by powerful, state-linked actors.
Correct. Attribution points directly to China-linked Advanced Persistent Threats, APTs. These are military-grade hacking units.
And the reports name them.
They do. Earth Lamia, also known as Warp Panda, and Jackpot Panda are flagged. This confirms the strategic intent. These groups aren't about simple financial crime.
They're about crippling state capability.
Yes. Large-scale, critical infrastructure disruption and industrial espionage. That's their mandate.
And the timing proves they were ready to go before this flaw was even public knowledge.
It does. The vulnerability was publicly disclosed by security researchers on December 3, 2025. These PRC-affiliated APTs had it operationalized, turned it into a full-fledged weapon within hours of that disclosure.
Man, hours.
That kind of speed is highly indicative of pre-compromised staging. They were sitting on this exploit, testing it, waiting for the perfect strategic moment, the distraction in Venezuela, to unleash it against the U.S.
This is where we need to connect the dots. The technical flaw, this bug in a website framework, how does that connect to the civilian home? To the local grocery bill? Why does this matter to the average person listening right now?
Because the primary goal of this whole operation is to hit the civilian logistics backbone. The threat actors are doing what's called live debugging against U.S. critical national infrastructure, CNI.
Targeting the systems that manage the flow of goods.
Everything. Trunking manifests, warehouse inventory software, port management platforms, utility distribution dashboards, all of it.
And the military relies on those same civilian contractors and software to sustain Operation Southern Spear in the Caribbean.
Exactly. The supply chain is dual use. If the U.S. military is focused on Venezuela, there's civilian logistics contractors, the ones moving fuel, food, medical supplies to the staging areas. They're using the exact same fragile digital infrastructure that Amazon, FedEx, and your local supermarket use.
So if those logistics systems crash, not from a bomb, but from a command error injected by React 2 shell, the consequences are immediate, and they are domestic.
They're catastrophic. Supplies just freeze instantly. A command fault in a port management system means containers don't get unloaded. A flaw in trucking manifests means drivers can't get their routes or fuel allocations.
And the reports say this translates directly to
empty supermarket shelves, fuel shortages at the pump, and inability for local businesses to even process payments. The cyber war comes home in the form of economic strangulation and civil unrest driven by scarcity.
Which brings us to the strategic timing that links these two storms together. The sources highlight a specific, very high-risk convergence window.
December 18th to the 21st, 2025.
And that 4-day period is codenamed what?
Operation Iron Solstice. That's what the intelligence community is calling it. The intel warns that this window is specifically designed to maximize disruption while we're all distracted by geopolitics.
So the kinetic trap in the Caribbean, demanding full military attention,
combined with the sudden, widespread cyber chaos from React 2 Shell, creates a perfect storm where national security resources are stressed to the breaking point.
and the civilian population faces systemic failure. Food, fuel, finance.
All at the same time. It's the optimal time to strike the weakest point in the entire system.
It's a cascading failure.
It is. A digital Pearl Harbor designed not to kill people, but to destroy trust and capacity.
So we have the kinetic trap diverting our attention to Venezuela and the silent switch of React 2 Shell crippling our logistics here at home. But the poly crisis has a third factor, and this one is deeply unsettling. It's the war coming home, not just through cyber, but through proxies and silent, invisible weapons. This is the asymmetric sprawl, where the lines of conflict just disappear completely.
This vector, it really highlights the ultimate goal of fifth-generation warfare. You achieve your strategic goals by using non-state actors and non-traditional weapons.
So the hostile state maintains plausible deniability.
Complete plausible deniability. The battleground is moved directly into the civilian space.
Let's start with the proxy threat that's already here, established and operating inside the United States. Tren de Aragua, TDA.
The core intelligence assessment on this is very clear. TDA should absolutely not be seen as just a street gang doing petty crime.
They've evolved.
They have, into a hybrid criminal state. A sophisticated paramilitary criminal enterprise that acts as an explicit proxy for the Venezuelan regime.
Specifically for the Cartel de los Soles.
Yes. Their operations are designed not just for criminal profit, but for strategic utility in a conflict.
And their footprint here in the U.S. is far more extensive than I think most people realize.
That's the crucial, alarming domestic threat. TDA is currently operating in at least 23 U.S. states. They have established networks for human trafficking, extortion, sophisticated identity fraud.
And the scenario the intelligence maps out is clear. If the U.S. launches kinetic strikes on Venezuela,
these TDA cells could be activated for domestic sabotage, targeted assassinations of local officials, critical infrastructure personnel, or what the reports call engineered unrest.
Engineered unrest, what does that actually look like on the street?
It looks like synchronized, well-funded chaos. Imagine coordinated attacks on key nodes, substations, communication towers, distribution centers. At the exact same time, the cyber systems are failing from React 2 Shell.
To multiply the impact.
The goal is to generate mass confusion and paralyze local law enforcement and emergency services. It's asymmetric sprawl. The battlefield is moved to our cities using actors that are already embedded here.
And the administration's legal response to this threat is, well, it's telling. They aren't treating them like standard criminals.
That's a critical point in the legal sources. The administration has invoked the archaic, rarely used Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to expedite detention and removal of non-citizen TDA affiliates.
This isn't just a political statement.
Not at all. This redesignation signals that the U.S. government legally views them not as criminals but as alien enemies, an invading force acting on behalf of a hostile foreign power. It gives the government broad emergency powers to deal with them outside of standard criminal justice procedures if war breaks out.
Okay, so moving from the proxy army to the silent weapons. This next topic, it sounds like science fiction, but the reports treat it as a verified critical threat.
It does.
Directed energy weapons, DUW, and high-power microwaves, HPM, we're calling this the invisible fire.
This is truly the edge of fifth-gen warfare. These weapons operate at the speed of light. They're silent, they're invisible, yet they are capable of inflicting both physical damage on infrastructure and deep psychological harassment on the body, what the intelligence calls the soma.
And they're designed for plausible deniability.
Perfect plausible deniability.
So how do HPM and DUW actually disrupt infrastructure?
Primarily through a process called backdoor coupling. HPM pulses are just these massive bursts of focused electromagnetic energy. They don't have to be aimed perfectly.
They find their way in?
They find their way into sensitive electronics through tiny ingress points, unshielded wires, power cords, antenna feeds, even microscopic gaps in the casing.
And once they're inside,
they induce a massive high-voltage surge that instantly fries the internal circuitry. It causes simultaneous electronic failures in a localized area. The reports call it the glitch, but it's a physical terminal one.
So unlike React 2 shell, which is a software error, HPM is a physical hardware attack that's disguised as an electrical failure.
Exactly. It looks like a massive power surge or a transformer blowing up, but it's a targeted electromagnetic attack. If you use it on a power substation or a hospital server room, the result is immediate darkness and system failure.
What about the biological impact? How do these invisible fires affect the human body?
This is the biological harassment vector.
Yeah.
It's often related to active denial systems, sometimes called heat rays.
Right.
These systems emit a highly focused, very high-frequency 95 gigahertz microwave beam, and that frequency is critical.
Why?
It's absorbed almost entirely by the top 164th of an inch of your skin. This energy excites the water and fat molecules in that top layer, and it creates a sudden, intense, and intolerable heating sensation. They call it the heat.
It's an unbearable pain sensation.
Yes. The reports emphasize the key is that it causes immediate, agonizing pain and panic without causing deep tissue damage. This makes it a perfect tool for non-lethal crowd control, dispersal, or harassment designed to create psychological distress and paranoia.
All without leaving visible wounds.
So it's highly effective for driving people out of an area or making them think they're suffering from some unexplained health event.
And the goal of all this is to create chaos with, again, complete plausible deniability. The reports suggest these could even be used to start catastrophic events that look natural.
This is the most frightening application. Consider a region with naturally dry conditions like the wildland urban interface in Southwest Oregon, which is cut by critical infrastructure like I-5.
Okay.
DEW can be focused to create electrical arcs, the spark from metal objects or between power lines, even when there's no thunderstorm. In dry conditions, that electrical ignition can start catastrophic wildfires that are completely indistinguishable from natural or accidental events.
And a fire like that could cut off a critical artery like I-5, isolating entire communities.
Making military and supply movement impossible. And the state actor can genuinely claim it was just a natural accident.
The perfect asymmetrical weapon.
It achieves a strategic effect, infrastructure isolation, economic destruction, while the adversary maintains plausible deniability. Or worse, can blame the target nation's own shoddy infrastructure.
So if the infrastructure is glitching, the body is burning, and fires are sparking, how is this chaos weaponized psychologically? This is the cognitive vector, targeting the mind, the spirit, the pneuma.
The intelligence indicates that the final vector will be synthetic chaos, AI-driven deepfakes, disinformation. They're predicted to peak right around that convergence window, December 18th to 21st.
Amplified by the digital chaos.
Exactly. We're talking about fraudulent videos of leaders surrendering, fake emergency broadcasts, narratives designed to sow deep division and psychological paralysis.
It sounds like a multi-sensory attack on reality itself.
It is, and this leads to the most provocative part of the intelligence and the most critical for personal defense, the signs and wonders deception.
What is that?
The intelligence assesses that atmospheric effects induced by DDW, things like plasma balls, anomalous aerial lights, localized weather disruptions, could be used to simulate supernatural or even alien events.
Why would a sophisticated nation-state fake an alien event?
Because the cognitive war is aimed at inducing psychological paralysis and moral surrender. The deception is timed to coincide with the deep fakes, the cyber chaos, and the physical manifestations of the invisible fire.
When people are panicked and destabilized.
They become receptive to a narrative of salvation. The goal is to introduce a technological savior, a figure or a system that promises immediate stability, peace, and technological upgrades in exchange for ideological surrender and total control.
It's the perfect setup for a massive psychological operation.
It targets the most profound aspect of human belief. The crisis itself is the setup for the solution they intend to impose.
If you can make reality disintegrate,
people will accept any narrative that restores order, no matter how unbelievable or authoritarian it is.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've outlined this convergence, the kinetic track in the Caribbean, the silent switch of React 2 shell, and the asymmetric sprawl of proxies and invisible fire. The problem seems overwhelming. State level.
Almost impossible to counter.
Right.
But it's not. The strategic insight here is that resilience against this kind of converged assault, it doesn't lie in trying to compete with their state-level tech.
Okay.
It lies in a strategic shift toward analog, hardened, and community-based defensive protocols. You adopt an asymmetric defense posture, but at the household level. This is the purpose of protocol interwall.
Our three-step checklist for your home, your oikos.
Right, we use physics, low-tech solutions, and human connection to neutralize these high-tech threats.
Let's start with step one, decouple from the chain. This is about financial and supply resilience.
If the enemy's weapon is our centralized digital dependency, then the defense's decentralized analog capacity.
It would starve the threat.
You cut the digital dependency. It's a tactical, temporary withdrawal of consent from these fragile digital systems.
And the intel gives a surprisingly specific deadline for this withdrawal, based on that iron solstice window.
Yes. The tactical recommendation is to initiate a digital blackout. Physically air-gap unplug and disable network connectivity on all non-essential smart devices and IoT hardware.
Starting when?
Starting December 17 at 1800 hours. Your smart speakers, smart refrigerators, all of it. It's not just a target surface for React to show, it's a passive surveillance and access grid.
So you deny them the target surface.
For a few days. It's your primary cyber defense. If a device listens, connects, or updates, you unplug it.
And this digital discipline has to extend to our finances. This leads to the data freeze.
This is critical. Sensitive electronic financial transactions, online banking, wire transfers, large purchases, investments, all of that has to cease during that high-risk window, December 18th to 21st.
That's the window for the glitch to manifest.
It is. That glitch can be phantom transactions, manipulated ledgers that show a zero balance, or just accounts freezing up. You have to assume any transaction during that window is vulnerable.
So the countermeasure to the data freeze has to be analog resilience. How do you keep commerce going when the digital banks fail?
You need to secure analog liquidity. That means relying on physical cash small bills that are easy to trade or establish community barter systems, even physical script from local businesses.
Enough non-digital value to get through that 3 to 4 day freeze.
Exactly. And this requires physical logistics at home. The sources suggest storing physical supplies, food, water, medicine, for a minimum of 2 weeks. If the logistics software freezes, the trucks stop. You can't rely on the supermarket.
That 2-week buffer is your resilience against economic strangulation.
It is.
Okay, that brings us to step 2, the gray man. Physical hardening and OPSEC. We're dealing with proxies embedded in our communities and these invisible weapons, so we need to be prepared physically and behaviorally.
Behavioral OPSEC is your first line of defense against proxies. Do not stand out.
Don't be a target.
In a period of high civil stress and potential engineered unrest, conspicuous consumption or visible preparedness makes you a target. Don't brag about your supplies. Don't put political stickers on your car. Blend in.
An invisible target is a safe target.
Especially with groups like TDA potentially being activated for harassment or sabotage.
Now, for the physical hardening, specifically against the invisible fire, the HPM and DEW, we need to build a Faraday shield for backup electronics, radios, hard drives, medical devices. Give us the technical instructions. How do you build a reliable, low-cost shield?
Okay, it's based on simple physics. You're creating a conductive cage to dissipate incoming electromagnetic energy.
Right.
First, your container. A metal trash can, a metal ammo can, or even a heavy wood box that you line with conductive material like aluminum foil or copper mesh.
Okay.
Second, the 110th rule is mandatory for your mesh or seals. The conductive material has to be a continuous path. Any gaps in that mesh must be smaller than 3 centimeters, about an inch, to block standard gigahertz threats. Tighter is always better.
And the third step is the one people always mess up.
Insulation is mandatory. This is the most common failure point. You must line the inside of that conductive container with a non-conductive material. Cardboard, towels, rubber mats.
The device cannot touch the metal walls.
It absolutely cannot. If it does, the induced current in the metal will just jump to the device and fry it, rendering the whole shield useless.
And for larger shielding efforts?
Like lining a room or a closet, all that conductive shielding has to be properly grounded, connected to the earth with a conductor to safely dissipate the electrical current.
And we also need to protect the soma, the body, from those heat rays. What's the simplest material for that?
That's where reflective armor comes in. Use cheap, readily available materials like Mylar space blankets or heavy-duty aluminum foil.
They're highly reflective of microwave energy.
They reflect up to 99% of the high-frequency beams used by these active denial systems. It's a quick, cheap, effective defense. You can line critical windows, doors, even rooms. We also advise the wet wall concept.
Stacking water containers.
Or soaked blankets along exposed walls. Water is an excellent absorber of microwave energy. It converts it harmlessly into heat.
Okay, finally, step 3. The analog lifeline. This is about securing your community, your oikos, against the deepest threat, the cognitive war.
The most sophisticated threat isn't physical or digital, it's psychological. The deepfakes, the government paralysis, the gaslighting.
Your primary defense is high-trust human interaction.
It is. Prioritize face-to-face communication, F2F. That is the most secure method of information transfer. Short-range analog radio, like GMRS or ham, that's your critical backup for coordination when the internet and cell networks are down.
And this feeds into the defense against induced paranoia, community verification.
Yes, cross-checking reality with your neighbors. This is how you defeat psychological operations. If you feel the heat or your electronics experience the glitch or you see the spark, you must immediately cross-check that with trusted neighbors, your household,
your local network.
This process of high-trust verification confirms that an attack is real, systemic, and not a product of your own paranoia. It defeats psychological gaslighting at the source.
But the deepest part of the cognitive defense, this is about inoculating against that final step, the signs and wonders deception, the technological savior.
This is where the Galatians 1.8 protocol comes in.
Explain why this is the strategic intellectual firewall against these advanced psyops.
This is the ultimate non-negotiable cognitive firewall. It's ancient wisdom applied to hyper-advanced tech. The intelligence says the final deception will be powerful. It will offer sudden total peace and a technological upgrade to solve all the chaos.
Right.
The protocol dictates that any message or sign in the sky, no matter how visually or technologically sophisticated, no matter how convincing, that offers salvation or an upgrade, but denies core, established, pre-existing beliefs about truth and morality.
Must be rejected immediately.
As a hostile psychological operation, no questions asked.
So it's a binary test. If the message contradicts the immutable truth you already hold, you reject the messenger entirely. You don't negotiate with the narrative.
It creates psychological immunity. By deciding before the crisis hits what standard of truth you will adhere to, you preemptively defeat the chaos that's trying to impose a false solution on you. The deception relies on you being surprised and morally paralyzed. This protocol keeps your moral compass fixed.
So, to summarize what we've unpacked today in this deep dive, you are watching for the convergence of three storms: the kinetic trap, the Venezuela diversion, which pulls military focus south,
Then the silent switch, React 2 shell, crippling domestic logistics starting around December 18th.
and the asymmetric sprawl, introducing domestic proxy chaos through TDA and the invisible fire from DDW and HPM.
And preparation is the key to resilience. By hardening your physical and digital assets and by leaning into your high-trust community, your oikos, you actively sever the dependencies that this whole polycrisis relies on to function.
The entire system relies on our centralized digital dependency.
It does.
So this is about a strategic, systemic withdrawal of consent from that fragile digital control grid.
Exactly. If you're relying on physical cash, hardened communications shielded in a Faraday cage, and neighbor-to-neighbor trade, the state-level cyber attack might cause volatility in the markets, but it can't achieve its strategic objective, which is total control over your life and your community.
By adopting analog resilience, you neutralize their primary weapons.
By simply refusing to play their highly centralized game.
And this brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, to mull over this week as you process all this data. The intelligence is clear, the grid is theirs, the ground is ours.
The only power the adversary has is the power we grant them through our dependencies. So what small analog dependency, whether it's using only cash at the grocery store this week, or setting up your Mylar reflective armor, or just having that face-to-face meeting with your trusted neighbor, what are you going to sever this week to build your arc? Stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay analog.